Sony has decided that it wants to ruin Helldivers 2 and any small amounts of goodwill that it's accumulated over the years with the PC community. It wants to ruin its image as a company in general because they now want you to link your PSN account in order to play Helldivers 2 on Steam. It is a requirement. You cannot play if you do not link your Steam account beginning the 9th of May on a game that when you bought it, you didn't have this requirement. This is a huge deal. This is a huge problem that needs immediate action. And I'm going to explain just how important this is in an order of least worst to the most incredibly bad parts of it, because there is no good part here. So hi, I'm Mugthief. My hair is a mess, I am aware. Don't talk to me about it, we have way bigger fish to fry today. I'm also really angry, but I'm going to try and explain this, calmly. So what does this PSN requirement mean? Well, if you have a PlayStation Network account, you must link it to your Steam account and input it in the game. You must log in order to continue playing. If you don't have a PSN account, you have to make one. Otherwise, you can't play the game. Now, this is already pretty bad. I don't know if you guys are aware, but PC gamers don't generally like having multiple accounts. People hate Uplay because of its launcher. Some people don't buy Ubisoft games because even if you buy them on Steam, you have to go through Uplay's launcher and have a Uplay account with a separate password and all of this stuff. EA, similar story with their launcher. Some people refuse to buy games that come out on the Epic Games Store just because you need a completely separate launcher and a completely separate account, and you have to keep giving all of these people your data. Not to mention that you divide your library from being on Steam to being on a bunch of different platforms, and we don't like that. So already, a lot of people, if Helldivers 2, from the start, had this requirement, would have chosen not to buy it. They would have chosen not to play it because they just don't want to partake in this sort of behavior. We prefer, when our games, you buy them on Steam and you play them on Steam and there's no other requirements. And I'm sure that if the game had launched in that state, they would have suffered some consequences for it. But it wasn't there at launch. It's being implemented now, retroactively, well beyond the refund period for a lot of people that understandably completely disagree with this because they don't want to give Sony their data, they don't want to link their accounts, or they don't want to make a PSN account to be sort of looped into Sony's ecosystem so that they have their data, which is what they want. They want your data so that in the next data breach that Sony has, I guess it gets stolen by every other hacker under the sun and you can get flooded with terrible emails or hacking attempts or just get bombarded with phone calls every day or something like that. They want your data and a lot of people don't want to give it to them. Completely logical. But now if you don't get to play the game where you've already invested time and money. Sony claims that this is for the good of unifying the community, for betterment of anti-cheat services on a game that I will remind you includes kernel-level anti-cheat on PC from launch, alright? Don't believe their lies. They just want your data. This is already shitty anti-consumer behavior. This is some of the worst practices I've seen, but we're not even at the worst part. Let's say you live in a country that doesn't have PSN, but of course has Steam, and you bought the game in one of these countries. Well, you can't play Helldivers 2 anymore. How could you? You can't make a PSN account. It's against terms of service to make a PSN account in a region that isn't yours, and if you live in a region that doesn't have PSN, you can't just VPN and make it in another region, which is already way too much effort than anybody should need to play a game that they already paid for. But you will get banned. You cannot do that. You just... goodbye. And I'm hoping that there's going to be a big hullabaloo if this goes through, where people who have bought the game and are in those regions are going to get their refunds, and hopefully the refunds of any potential microtransactions that they bought, everything, and we have to make a big stink about it, because these people will no longer be able to play a game that they paid for, sunk hours into, built friendships and communities around, and they're gone. It's disgusting. And they do have to go through a special process to get refunded, by the way, because they probably already went over the refund period because this is being implemented retroactively. At the drop of a hat, suddenly, things can change and you either deal with them, and the conditions of the game when you bought it don't matter anymore according to Sony, but it gets worse, at least in my opinion. What this is doing is setting a precedent. Have to remember that games like Destiny 2, which are first-party Sony games, they directly own everything there, do not require you to link a PSN account to play on Steam. But Helldivers 2, which is funded and published by Sony, and they do own the IP, but is not developed by a studio in-house at Sony, they are taking over and using it as their vehicle to present their new strategy of retroactively implementing this bullshit to harvest your data or to get you into the PlayStation ecosystem based on lies. And they are doing it with a game that I love and that I have championed over and over again. They are finding ways to take something that is beautiful, that represents good, healthy, consumer-friendly trends in the live service gaming space. A game about wholesome community building and rallying together to fight off something evil and turning it into an example for the worst practices available. And that hurts. Let's look at the precedent that this sets. This is Sony preparing you for the future having a PlayStation launcher or requiring a PSN account in all of their games and telling you that they are willing to change radically something about a game that you love at the drop of a hat to benefit themselves. And they know that they're the villains here. They know that this is dangerous, but they still see themselves winning on the other side because they are slowly building an empire of games, especially with things like the downfall of Xbox at the moment. They just want to seize as much control. And the way that these things work is that there's pushback here at the first step, but then at the 7th step, it's normalized, and then you get those messages on the internet of people saying, well, what did you expect? It's a Sony game. You knew this when you bought it. And that normalization makes me sick. This is very bad. Like, I can't find the words to express just how absolutely disgusting this is. Now, some people have said that Arrowhead is also guilty because they bow their head and accept this. And we don't know if they just willingly did this as well, or if they're involved in any capacity, or what they are doing, or if this is just Sony. We don't know how much blame we can place on Arrowhead as well, but we can definitely place the blame on Sony, and they have to bow their heads to them. And for now, I think that's where the hatred should be very much directed towards. And already Steam reviews are plummeting as people are complaining about this, as it should be. Now I want to highlight that Spitz, which is the community manager over on Discord, sent out this message. It's not like this is the first or even the 14th mainstream game to require a third-party account that takes a couple of minutes to create. But if it's a deal breaker to have to take 120 seconds out of your day to enter an email and password and then forget about it, change your Steam review and make your displeasure known on a platform where it matters. A lot to unpack here. I don't like the way that he's minimizing the issue and towing the corporate line, pretending like they are not trying to steal your data as much as possible, pretending that there are not a very large amount of people that will no longer have access to be in this community anymore because they cannot play the game anymore. I dislike so much about this message, but at least at the bottom he says, change your Steam review and make your displeasure known on a platform where it matters, and that is exactly what we should do. You know what, Spitz? I hate this message, to be honest. I think it's really scummy anyways, but I'm going to choose to look at that last part of that message as you saying that if we absolutely bombard the shit out of this, there is potential for change, and that Sony will react and change whatever they're doing. So, that's what we should do. I'm gonna calm down, not get mad at this message. In the heat of the moment, we can say things we don't mean. Whatever. Okay? Not gonna talk about your language anymore. And this is exactly what we are supposed to do. So there are two things here that I want to tell you about. Firstly, it is that your outrage, your indignation at things, is a commodity now. The world today trades in outrage as an economy. Your clicks, your views, your reviews, your interaction, your engagement is incredibly valuable. There is a huge economy built on it, and people want you to be outraged. People want you to get mad at things, to have extreme feelings. They want us to be more tribalistic because it leads to better clicks. It leads to better engagement. People want you to find your little echo chamber and not leave it. And hopefully that echo chamber includes you being very angry at things, because that's how we siphon the most engagement out of people. And I try my best to be very sensible and reasonable on this channel. I try and make sure that I look at things from a position where I'm not trying to get your outrage over things. Today is different, because today outrage is warranted. If this is the future that Sony envisions for their products, or how they want to obtain more power, more of a presence in gaming everywhere, including on PC, if this is the path they want to take, if they see themselves being successful by finding more ways to force you into their ecosystem or to harvest your data, they will get there eventually. They will not stop until they reach it. We cannot do anything about that, but we can indeed stop the progress. We can slow it down as much as possible, and we can set an example for many other companies to not try the same shit. In a perfect world, in an optimistic view of the world, we can stop it outright, because we are the consumers and we have power. No matter how it looks sometimes these days, they are meant to make a product that is good enough for us to give them our money. And without us, they will not succeed. And when they do this, we should punish them. We should express that we do not tolerate this and we do not want them to get our money in any way possible. So it matters that we act. It matters that we complain. It matters that we leave those reviews and we make a fuss about it. I like to remind people that when the Xbox One came out and said that it was always online and you couldn't share games, Sony whipped up in less than 24 hours their whole marketing campaign to be about how you could share your games, about how it wasn't always online. But if there had not been the extreme backlash to the Xbox One's always online nature, Sony would have pursued it as well because it's the best for their business. But it was that outrage towards Microsoft that made Sony pivot and forget about always online for a while, for an entire console generation. Our outrage can have a significant impact on the future of the industry we love and the games that we love. Make yourself heard. Go to Steam, change your review to negative, but make sure that you say why. It's not just that the game requires your PSN account. If that had been there at launch, we could have just made a decision as sensible customers. But instead, make sure you say that they changed that requirement after launch and locked thousands upon thousands of people out of playing the game. Tell them that they changed the rules of the game mid-game into the worst possible outcome for you as a consumer. Make sure that the story is heard in its entirety, so that they know why you're complaining, and so that future customers that look at those reviews understand not just the state of the game, but the behavior of the company behind it. So that this spreads and people understand how what Sony is trying to do is outright unacceptable. Make yourself heard on Twitter, on Reddit, on Discord, wherever you want, but make yourself heard because today it matters. Gaming has a history of slippery slopes and somehow always finds a way to dive head first down them. And no, it should not be our responsibility to stop them from doing this. But unfortunately, it falls onto us to do everything we can to stop that slippery slope, because we know where this goes. If you've been around long enough, you know where this starts and you know where it ends. And please don't let this happen with a game that I think we all love so much, that represents so much good, that represents wholesome communities, that represents people coming together and not being separated because of stupid terms of service and PSN account linking. Make it about a game that's about having fun, about giving consumers what they want, a product worth its price that doesn't prey on your FOMO, have 17,000 microtransactions. There is so much good that Helldivers did and can continue to do instead of being ruined. Don't let this happen here. Don't let this happen ever. I've been Mugthief. Thank you so much for watching. Remember that your voice matters, so go make it heard. And as always, I'll see you again very soon.